you can't do that. You shouldn't do that. That's scary. What are they really telling you? I don't believe I could, so I don't think you can.
Welcome to the Have It All podcast. I'm Elon Ferdman, and along with my brother Guy, we're Satori Prime. We've spent the last 16 years on a quest of mastery, and not just in business, all areas. Mastery of our finances, our bodies, our relationships, and most importantly, our minds. You see, while most people fantasize about their dream life, we went out and created it. And you bet we learned a few things along the way. So if you want to gain new skills and tools that will help you achieve the life of your dreams, well, you've come to the right place. So get ready to have your mind expanded. Implement what you learn here today, and you'll start living the life of your dreams instead of just, well, dreaming about it. So are you ready to have it all? Let's go. All right, cool. So I want to share with you guys, at least to start, let me just start by sharing a cool quote with you, and then we'll kind of delve into it. So you've heard us talk about this. You're going to never not hear us talk about this, but the concept that there is no out there, really, right? Like all the world, you want to alter anything in the world. You want to change your life in any way. You want to transform. You want to enhance. You want to do anything, upgrade. You just look one place, and that's here, right? So all the stuff you talk about, personal responsibility and all that kind of stuff. So today we're going to talk about how to do that inside of relationships. And these are the relationships that are usually the hardest to do it in. So before we dive into that, I just want to read you a quick quote here. And it says, when pain, misery, or anger happen, it is time to look within you, not around you. To achieve well-being, the only one who needs to be fixed is you. What you forget is that when you are sick, it is you who needs the medication. When you are hungry, it is you who needs the food. The only one that needs to be fixed is you. But just to understand this simple fact, people take lifetimes. Now, the only thing I don't love about that word is the word fix. I'm not a big fix word guy. I would say like it's more of returning to self. But the concept is the concept, right? Which is, you know, Wayne Dyer says, for every time you point a finger, 3 fingers are pointing back at you. So just to kind of get you guys thinking and involved a little bit in the conversation so far, of the people in your life, and be honest, of the people in your life, which are the most difficult relationships? Okay. And just say, like, you can say my kids, my spouse, my parents, my siblings, my cousins, my grandparents, my boss. Like, which are the most difficult relationships in your life?
And by the way, just so you know, I don't seem to be able to see participants or the questions because I didn't see any question from Gina.
Oh, interesting.
I don't know why that keeps happening, that one or the other can't see it.
That's really strange.
Yeah. Maybe we should contact.
You got to contact them about that.
Yeah, that's seems to be happening more and more recently.
Yeah, it's very strange. All right, guys. Most difficult relationships. Just type it in the chat box or the Q&A box or something. Sisters. Okay, cool.
Okay, that I saw.
All right. So that's in the chat box. So chat box, you can probably see maybe Q&A. You can't?
Yeah, there's nothing in the Q&A for me.
Ex-wife.
Oh,
okay.
I just got out there before. Never mind.
Yeah, Curtis. Awesome. Corinne, Mark. Anybody for you guys? Parents. Okay, awesome. You guys are playing right into my hands. No, I knew exactly how this was going to be. So this is exactly what we're going to talk about. And the reason that these relationships are the most difficult, okay, is because there's the most history. So I'm going to say that again. The reason these relationships are the most difficult is because you have the most history. So sisters, parents, I don't know how long you were with your ex-wife, Curtis, but I'm assuming a good amount of time. But specifically, siblings and parents tend to be the most difficult relationships because you've known them your whole entire life, right? And what we do as human beings is we don't have what Buddha talks about, beginner's mind with people, right? We have history. Like, I know exactly how my brother is, right? Guy knows exactly how I am. Just like you guys know exactly how your sister is, exactly how your mom is, your brother, your dad, your wife, your husband. You know exactly how they are. So I want to give you an example here to really, really drive home the point of how the way you see people is not the way they are. You see them based on all of the stories and filters that you have about that person. And because of that, that person can literally only show up that way. So I'm going to give you a really positive example of how this is used, because this goes both in the positive and this goes both in the negative, right? Take us two, for example. You have a very, very specific listening of us. I mean, as a matter of fact, 3 of you are going to be in San Diego with us. So clearly you have a very specific listening of us, right? Whether that's like, we have something that you want, you like the way we teach, whatever your story of us or lens, if you will, that you have of us allows us to be this way for you, allows us to say things sometimes to you that other people may have said and you've never heard or resisted listening to or whatever, but because it's delivered through us and the filter that you have about us, you have a certain listening of us, okay? So keep that in the back of your hand. That's the one side of it, right? Now I'm going to give you the complete opposite side. So whether you live in this country or not, I'm sure you're bombarded just as we are with the nonsense that is the 2016 election of the US of America, which is whatever. I'm not going to say what it is.
Opinions withheld.
As South Park says, we need to pick between a giant douche and a turd sandwich, and I couldn't agree more. In any event, whichever side of the fence you sit on, okay, here's what I've noticed, right? So if you're a Donald Trump fan, okay, basically what that entails is not so much that you're a Donald Trump fan. It just means that you absolutely hate Hillary Clinton. You think she's like a crooked, conniving, will do anything to better herself politician, okay? Now she stands up at a debate and she's talking. And if that's your point of view, it doesn't matter what she says or how she says it. You're going to hear it one very, very specific way. And that is more proof for her being a conniving bitch. Okay? Now, if you're on the other end of that spectrum and you think Donald Trump is the devil reincarnate or the Antichrist, then it almost doesn't matter what he says. It's just going to go through that filter of yours and more proof of why this guy is a giant douchebag. Okay? Now flip it, right? Like, if you're a Hillary supporter, while one person is looking at this woman with fumes coming out of their face, you're listening to her and you're going, I like the way she handles herself. She's very well spoken, very pragmatic. Like, and that's your view because you want to vote for her and you will put on a filter to make you hear what she's saying in a very particular view. Likewise, if you like Donald Trump, you listen to him and you're like, he's my man. He's going to change everything. He's absolutely right about everything, right? So you can see how 2 people can look at the same exact person and just have complete and utter opposite opinions. And because of those opinions and filters, they will listen to that person very, very differently. Now, I'm sure there are people out there that absolutely hate Guy and I. I mean, there's people that hate stuff to us here and there, but I just think they hate themselves more than us. But
and that's your filter.
that could be my filter. So let's bring this back to your loved ones and people that you're around and parents, siblings, and things like that. From a very young age, you've had experiences with these people. And those experiences taint the way you see them. So you never see them, you're seeing your filter of them. And I want to share an example with you from my personal life of when I really got this for myself for the first time. So I was actually at the Landmark Forum, and a woman got up and was furious. She's like, my mom is crazy. There's nothing I can do. She's just insane, blah, blah, blah. And then the leader was like, okay, well, give me an example. Tell me why your mom's crazy. Oh, she's so annoying. She's always in my business, always this and that. She's like, okay, I got it. Give me an example. She goes, okay, so every time I leave the house, it could be 80 degrees outside. My mom will say, hey, please, she's always asking me like, did you take a jacket? Did you take an umbrella? And I'm like, Mom, it's 80 degrees and blue skies. I don't need a jacket and an umbrella. She's like, oh, we'll take it anyway. So I'm sitting back there and I'm going, okay. I mean, I'm not quite seeing the crazy, but, and the girl goes on every day. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's hot, if blue sky, every day. And so the woman goes, have you ever thought that that's how your mom says I love you to you? And I was like, And at this point, I'm not even thinking about my dad. I'm actually thinking about my grandparents. And I don't know if this happens in your families, but like Russian grandparents, you could walk in and be like, oh my God, I just had so much food at dinner. I'm so full. And they'd be like, what can I get you to eat? I'm like, I don't think you just heard me. Like, I can't move. I'm so full. Oh, come on, eat a little something. You want some tea? I'll make you a cake. I'm like, no, I'm really, really full. And what I realized in that moment was that that's the way my grandparents and now my in-laws and stuff like that, that's the way they share their love with you, through food. It's a very, very Russian Jewish thing. I'm sure Italians do the same thing.
I'm sure a whole bunch of
Greeks, and I'm sure there's a whole bunch of other cultures that do it. So anyway, so I'm sitting there and I'm thinking about my grandparents, and I'm like, okay, I can absolutely see that. Like, that's really cool. And then my dad pops in my head. And while I thought at the time I had a really, really good relationship with my dad, what I started to see in that moment was we were talking about filters, right? And the filter that I had for my dad I was probably created when I was, 10, 11, was our dad was, and you guys, for those of you guys that are coming to San Diego, you guys will actually get to meet our parents. He's very different today. I will just say that. But at the time, he was very militant in his approach. So like, Guy and I would wake up on a Sunday and be like, all right, we're going to play basketball with our friends in the park. And my dad's like, no, you're going to clean the leaves on the yard. We're like, but we told all our friends that we're going to play with them. He's like, so invite them. You guys can clean leaves together.
It's about right.
So at some point, I think I was a little bit older. I think it was around high school. I somehow got it that my dad was trying to control my life. Constantly telling me what to do, how to do, and just control my life. And so that I basically was like this, like it's in a moment, he says something and I go, stop trying to control me. And now I put on the glasses and it's the filter is my dad's trying to control me. And so now it almost doesn't matter what I say. It just keeps going through this filter of my dad's trying to control me. My dad's trying to control me. So I'm sitting at the seminar and I'm 21 years old and I'm really like looking at my relationship with my dad. And I had this feeling that we had like old cell phones. I was at college at the time. And I just remember like every time I saw his number come up, I was just like, oh, I don't want to talk to him right now. And I was like, well, where's that from? Right? Because if there's true connection and there's true love and there's true openness and all that stuff, that stuff shouldn't happen, right? Like, not that it should or shouldn't, but like I shouldn't have that sensation in my body. So I'm sitting there and I start thinking about this and I'm like reliving conversations that we had. And I'm like, holy shit. God knows how long now I've had this filter that my dad's trying to control me. And it got so bad that I'm thinking like he could literally sit in front of me and just say, Elon, I love you. And I would hear, stop trying to control me. And at that point, I realized how messed up what I had done inside was for our relationship. And so one of the tools that we'll share in San Diego, and one of the things that we share in our academy all the time, is share. And so I went to my dad and I apologized because I realized that I'd basically robbed us of the last God knows how many years of a relationship. Because through that filter is absolutely no possibility for a relationship. And more than that, there's no possibility for my dad to show up any other way than as a controlling human being. You guys get that? So whether it's your wife, your sister, your ex-wife, your whomever, I want you to try on that you have a filter of them. Some of you probably even resonate with the controlling thing. Whatever your complaint is about that person, I want you to start taking a deep, hard look in yourself. Because they're not that way. You made up that they're that way. And then you went investigating for decades to build your story and be factual about it. Right? I don't know how Donald Trump is. I have a very, very clear filter on how he is. Very clear. And it doesn't matter what he says or what he does. It all feeds into my filter of how he is. So if you guys want true connection in these relationships, in the most difficult relationships, what you have to realize is that you've painted that person into a corner. And until you give up that you painted them that way, and until you give up that they're a blank canvas, when you guys meet someone for the first time, whether it's on a date or you're going out to dinner or you're meeting someone at a networking or whatever, aren't you actually interested in who they are? Like finding out who they are newly? Like you don't have preconceived notions about them. You just go and figure that out.
Yeah, it's called
what if you can bring that same, say it again?
Pretense.
Yeah. What if you can bring that same beginner's mind to these relationships? What if you can have a conversation with your parents or your sister or your ex-wife and you actually give up that you know who the fuck they actually are? What would that look like? What would that create? So I wanted to share that with you because I've actually, this has come up in two of my one-on-one coaching clients just in the last week. And both of them in a week have recreated the relationship, one with their ex and another one with their mom. In a week. Just from giving up this nonsense.
P.S. I reached out to like a bunch of old clients of ours, not to do anything else except for just ask them how they are. So like I got in a conversation with Troy today. And Troy told me that he's in a new relationship, so that's awesome. But he's got his ex-wife is pissed and on him and like causing pain and using kids and all this kind of stuff. And I said, well, what is she actually trying to tell you? And he's like, I don't know. And I said, well, that's why it's not stopping. You're just listening to it through the same filter that you always listen to her through. And she's been trying to get in for a long time. In fact, that's probably why the relationship is over. She's never got that you got her. I'm like, all she needs is some space to get gotten, and then she'll stop throwing rocks at your face. Yeah. And he goes, that's exactly what I needed to hear. He's like, I'm going to go do that today.
Yeah.
It's like creating a space of nothing to listen to her through is going to create the disappearance of the impact that it's had. Like, and by the way, this is every relationship in your life. This is every relationship. There's like no exception to this, because whatever your point, well, I'm sure there is an exception to this, but it's unlikely that you have one so far. Like, you know, whatever point of view you have about this individual in your life, by the way, this includes you. Like Gina said it down there. Also, like, you have a point of view about the way that you are, about the way that you interact with the world. It's just a point of view about the way that the relationship is, right? Like, I don't know Donald Trump, but I have a relationship with him. I know myself. I have a relationship with myself. I have a relationship with my health, and I have a relationship with my spirituality. So, like, the same applied for me and Elon.
And your beard.
And I have a relationship to my beard, right? And usually and it's not just a relationship, but you're attached to the way that that relationship is, because you know the way that that relationship is, which means that it's predictable in the manner in which they're going to act and the manner in which you're going to act. You know, and a really good way to kind of like see this is like if Elon or I were on stage, and we will be eventually in the next few weeks, you know, and at the end of like an hour-long conversation, if it was your first meeting with us and we just went around the room and said, you know, how did Elon and Guy occur to you? And by the way, we're going to do something like this around an exercise like this around trauma. And I asked everyone in the room, like, how is it that we are? You're going to get like some overlap, but there will be a variance in the way that we occur to everybody. So you could say that the reality of who people are is more in the occurring than in the actual reality of it, right? So in that way, and however your past is built and however you listen to people and the way that they look and the way that they sound, you're adding meaning all the time. Everything. Guy has a beard, oh, he must be this way, right? Like, I see somebody walking down the street, I presume to know all this stuff about them. I don't know them from a hole in the ground, but to every person, we're different. So those 50 people have different stories about the way I am or the way that Elon is. So then the question is, how are we really? Who are we really? Well, we're 50 different ways to 50 different people. There actually is no way that we are outside of the way that we occur to that specific person. So another way I think about it is like, you're the narrator of a story, right? Like if you were like on Audible and you were like narrating a story, you narrate characters to life. So when we say like there's no one out there, I don't mean like maybe it's like really the Matrix and there really is nobody out there and it's just your own mental projections of things. But even if there is alternate energies out there of like beings, and I know this is a little bit like philosophical, but it's just interesting to think about, because it's interesting to think about so you can start breaking up these habits that you have that are so ingrained in the way that it is, so you can start questioning the way that it is and inquire deeper into how it could be versus how you think that it is. So if there's other beings out there, it's almost like our narration is putting the skin and the hair and the way that they look and the way that they act on them. And what we're really interacting with is not that person at all, but our perception of people in general, people who look like that, people who say those things, people who act that way, people who walk that way, people who smell that way. And you're just putting your mental projection and it's filling in the blanks. And you're really getting maybe like 2 to 5% of who that person really is. And most of it is you just acting out your automation about people who remind you of people that are that way, right? And then because of that, you're not really getting that person. You're really just interacting with your own insecurities most of the time. Yep. So like, you know, for those of you guys who are entrepreneurs, you deal with this all the time. People tell you, you can't do that. You shouldn't do that. That's scary. What are they really telling you? I don't believe I could, so I don't think you can. Is what they're really saying, right? They're taking their opinions and they're taking basically what they believe and they're veiling it as questions or they're veiling it as statements. And what they're really telling you is, I can't do that. I don't think you should either, right? And it's just, again, their own mental projections that now they're putting on you. And we all live inside of these other people's otherworld projections, and we're doing it to other people all the time. So, you know, for Elon and I, as an example, and Elon, I'm sorry to use you as an example, but it's just clear. You know, in these situations. So like I dealt with depression and suicide, as a lot of you guys know, through my teenage years. And during that time, Elon's and my relationship, we actually like got a lot of distance between us. And I don't think either one of us was really clear why, right? For like years, probably for like 6 of those years, we had no idea why. It was just like, we're growing apart. And that's what people say. Like they reason it. They don't really inquire as to what the fuck happened. So we had kind of like grown apart. And like Elon said, he was taking his forum. I was actually in my landmark forum. I was in my advanced course that same weekend because we kind of did it pretty close together. And he calls me and I'm in session. I walk outside and he starts sharing with me. What he shared with me is that during the time where I was dealing with all that stuff, Elon thought that if he gave it any validity at all, like he even communicated with it in any form or fashion, that he would validate the experience and that I would go deeper into my depression, right? My experience was my brother's not here for me. And in fact, that was making me go deeper into my depression because when I needed somebody, I didn't have the closest people to me really supporting me. So for Elon, like that's a major insight in terms of the filter that you've put in a conversation around somebody. And basically what he did was he's like, I'm really sorry. He's like, I really get the impact of that. We're both fucking like crying like crazy, you know, because it really is what needed to be said between us to get complete about what was in the way of us communicating again. And like ever since then, so I was 19, Elon was 21, like our relationship just went like this. It just skyrocketed. Like everything changed about our relationship. And that's what needed to be said. Now, over the years, you guys are clear. That's not the only filter Elon and I have over each other. Like even to this day, things happen and we're like, oh, like, you know, we react to each other, but we're not reacting to each other. We're reacting to past based beliefs about each other. And it happens. But what we've gotten extremely good at is our ability to see what those things are. And we're in active pursuit of getting them complete and working on them so that there's no more impact in the relationship in that way, right? So can I take it to the next part of the conversation?
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, let's just see if anybody, like, did this guys resonate with you? Do you see how you can use this tool in distinction? And do you have any other questions or clarifications or anything like that that you want us to process?
Yeah, just let us know in the chat box there if you're just tracking the conversation. We just want to make sure we're not talking over your head. I think you're all brilliant enough to get this. Cool. Awesome. Okay. Awesome. So look, here's what I want to tell you. We are, because of these filters and because we've done it so many times, our brain to conserve energy relies on automation. It really does. Just like in business today, right? Like the reason Elon and I can run a multi-7-figure business is because we rely on automation, right? That is a projection and a function of the mind that people just rely on. So we're all looking, how do we maximize time? Your brain is looking how to maximize energy because, by the way, it's the number one resource, like it's your biggest muscle in your body. And it is the number one thing that eats up calories, like caloric energy in your body. It requires a lot of energy. So it's looking for ways to create efficiency. Part of the way it does that is through pattern recognition, right? So if like Elon acts, if I see Elon, or it seems to me that Elon's acting a certain way over and over again, my brain's patterning that in and it's creating like a default function around Elon, right? Oh, that's the way Elon is. This is the way I respond when Elon's that way. And as long as I survive that conversation or that interaction, my brain will go, that's good. We survived. Let's keep doing that. Even if I have a ton of pain around the relationship, it'll just keep doing it over and over again. So if you're in like an argument, you guys will know that there are like certain things that we do that it almost seems like you're not really there for. You know, like an argument is one of those things. You ever been in an argument where you like kind of like snap back into it and you're like, what the fuck are we arguing about? You know what I'm talking about? Or if you're like on your drive home from work or something and you like get into the driveway and you can't remember the last 10 minutes of the drive, you're like, who got me here? You know, you are off in your head thinking about something, changing the radio dial, listening to an audiobook, whatever, and you're like home, like automation took you home, right? And you're like, well, thank God I'm here because I don't know who the hell got me here. Another experience I can think of is like sex, right? Just like a heightened emotional state. It's like you're not almost like not even there. And I think for some people, that's why they like it. It's a release from their mind. Anyway, my point is that it's automation at play. Once automation kicks in, by definition, it's going to play itself out, right? It's like that programming's in. So if you're going to wait till the moment that you're like in an argument to be like, oh, let me catch myself, I'm in the middle of an argument, you're shit out of luck, right? You're going to play that out. And for those of you guys who like yelled at people or like have, you know, issues with like anger and stuff like that, I'm one of those people, right? Straight up, like I get hostile quickly. I have a very short fuse when it comes to like defensiveness.
We used to call him Tasmanian devil.
Yeah, right. That was like kind of my default mode was like because my experience is I'm not being listened to, so it's like let me elevate my voice so you hear me. Like I'm, you know, and same thing with parents. It's like you're not listening to me, right? And you start yelling and stuff because you feel like, well, if I just yell louder, maybe it'll get in, stuff like that. So I'm definitely one of those people. And by the time I go through my automation, on the opposite side of that is always the same experience for me. I feel guilty. I feel shame. I don't get the result that I want ever. I can't think of one time where I got an argument. At the end of it, I'm like, yes, got the result I wanted. It's always the exact opposite. I always feel like the asshole, and I always go and clean it up. And I'm like, God, how many times do I have to apologize for this fucking automation? So if I wait till that kicks in, I'm already out of luck. So the distinction here we want to create with you, and we're going to talk about this a lot at the event, is creating like trap doors, right? And you have to do this when you're not in a heightened state of emotion. Otherwise, it's like too late. It's like, oh, all right, blah, blah, blah. So for me, something I've learned about the identity, and bro, you can chime in anytime.
Yeah.
But like, for me, something I've learned about the identity is that the identity is set up in such a way, and again, this is something we're going to talk about, we're going to diagram, we're going to give you guys access to. I'm not going to get into the whole thing, how to create it now, but like the identity, part of its design is to hide the identity from yourself, right? What is our best way to hide something from ourselves? We act against our personal nature. As a coach, I'll tell you, one of the things I've learned about people is whatever they're showing you on the outside, they feel the exact opposite on the inside.
Give them an example. What do you mean by that?
So if somebody is acting like overly positive, like positive thinking, usually they're depressed as fuck internally. I'm not saying that applies to everybody, but like it doesn't take many questions to crack the egg and like they all come spilling out. And so they're like, oh my God, and like, you know, and they just have a lot of insecurities. And that insecurity is being overcompensated for by positive thinking. Same thing with people like who bully other people, right? There's a really great example. Like that anger, that confidence all comes from insecurity. Like, you know, and they're just trying to have people pay attention to them because they feel so unacknowledged in the world. And that's why they bully. And with terrorism, it's a lot of the same stuff. It's just people in a lot of pain who want to like transmute that pain so other people understand their pain. It's over and over again, right? So like, it's kind of the way it works. So the way the identity is shaped is that A, it's shaped, and B, then it's hidden from your view. And the way it hides it from your view is all the ways that you say that you're not. Okay? So like, you know, if you get like in a heated debate and somebody's like, you know what? You always do this. You always get frustrated. You always yell at me, blah, blah. And you go, no, I don't. Fuck you. The moment you get defensive, it's that part of your identity that doesn't want to get found out. And then there's a missed opportunity to see the thing that you could have worked on. So I've had some training about this in the last few months, and I kind of realized that it's true. It's like all the things people tell me that I am, that I get defensive about, is the things that I don't want to deal with about myself. So if like I say I'm not, guess what? It's because I am, right? So I kind of created this thing that if I get defensive, I stop and I really listen, and I stop being defensive, right? So there have been a few situations last month when I was in New York around something that happened while I was there for a wedding with Elon and his wife. And then something that happened between him and I last week before a webinar, where just like a little text message just right out of context, like how often you start getting heated, blah, blah, blah. And it's like both times the moment I saw myself getting defensive, it just stopped me dead in my tracks, right? So what I created is this go-to modus operandi that when I get defensive, like here's what I do. Here's what I start paying attention to. Because in the past, I would just let that like, boom, like run its course, right? I'm justified, I'm righteous, they're assholes, they're wrong, I'm gonna let them have it, like all that stuff. And I've gotten better over time, you know, with like managing my emotional state and stuff like that. And I don't mean like controlling it, I just mean like, okay, well that's there, I'm gonna let that pass, you know, not react to the first thing that's there. However, this has really been really revolutionary for me. And it's not a new concept for me, but it's really important in this area of my life for me to have that trap door, because it really honestly harms my relationships more than it does good. So it's something you want to consider for yourself. You know, a question to write yourself is, what do I tell myself that I'm not? Another way to see this is when you look out at the world, let's say you see a lot of stupid people that upsets you, or you see a lot of angry people that upsets you, or you see a lot of sad people that upsets you. What you're hiding is that what you're telling yourself is, I'm not that way, they are. And the truth is you are that way. And you're not dealing with that. It's incomplete for you. If it was complete for you, you wouldn't have that experience with people.
Yeah.
And that's what you're projecting. You're projecting the thing you say that you're not onto other people. And instead of making yourself wrong about it, you've now chosen to make them wrong about it. And it's just so you don't have to deal with it. If you were to deal with it, if you were to get that complete, you would no longer have that experience of people, period. Because that's the only way you would even have that experience of people. Is that clear for you guys? Does that give you access to something? And we're going to do, again, exercises about the identity, around trauma, around how to create trap doors and identify them properly and all that kind of stuff. Awesome. And Gina, I think for you, you know, just from like kind of knowing your story, this is something you can really start working on like immediately. All the things you say you're not, everything that you make people wrong for, like to investigate. And by the way, this is not about making yourself wrong. If you start doing that, this is really ineffective. This is a way to inquire into where you are actually ineffective in your life, like where there's trauma in your life, where you are not getting results in your life because of blah, blah, blah. We use other people to justify what we're making wrong about ourselves. It's like the protagonist, antagonist type of thing. And we're all doing good cop, bad cop basically on ourselves.
Give them, what is it from Dark Light Chasers, I mean?
Dark Side of the Light Chasers. Yeah, and that's what and that's kind of the example in that book, which is fantastic. It's like the thing that you see out there that people are that you make wrong is actually what you need to go to work on with yourself. So
give them the example with the
yeah. So if we were to say, right, and we could say that as a human being, we are a being of infinite possibility, right? Like a baby is not born with like a manual that's like, okay, well, this one's going to be an officer, this one's going to be a doctor. Like I always say part of the reason you enjoy being around babies is the energy of that being is infinite possibility, and it reflects back on yourself about your infinite possibility. Now, as adults, we really don't believe in infinite possibility. Like when I show up and coach somebody, it's like, tell me about yourself. Well, I'm a lawyer and I have a problem with my wife, and like that's who I am, and I'm from Michigan or something, right? And it's like your identity is like, I'm these two things, completely forgetting that you're a being of infinite possibility. So if you just imagine like all the ways that you could be as possibilities, right? And across your chest you have like outlets, you know, like outlets that you plug into a wall. Anything that you have that's complete about you, like is not an issue for you about the way that you are. Let's say that has like a plastic cover on it. Okay. Like you can't access that. However, anything that's incomplete about you, the moment you step around somebody, what they do is they just like, whoop, they plug right in. And now that incompleteness shows up in that person for you as something to deal with. And that's how we are. Everyone's just plugging into the stuff that's incomplete with us. And that's what we're dealing with. But mostly we then get defensive about it. And that's what hides our ability from actually inquiring and then having a breakthrough about another way to perceive that thing that would give us power around that area of our life. And honestly, a lot, if not most, if not all of the work that we do with Elon is to uncover these things that are seemingly blind spots and bring them into view for you. Because until you can see these blind spots, you have no access to a choice about how to reconfigure that story. And it's just running on autopilot over and over again. Now, I think you guys would agree that if something is in your blind spot, regardless of whether you can see it or not, if I'm driving in a car and there's a car next to me in my blind spot, whether or not I can see it, if I turn into that lane, there's going to be an impact on my life, like a pretty bad one, right? And a lot of us are doing that. We keep turning into the lane where the cars are next to us, crashing, having this experience of life not working for us, and we don't understand why. And it's like, well, nobody told you that there's a car in your blind spot. So imagine just like bringing that car out of the blind spot, you're going to have a very different choice to make. And you're going to have a different story about why it is that things aren't working for you. Even if I saw that car and I go crashing into it, I'm clear about what created the crash, right? So next time I say, like, oh, I shouldn't do that. Last time that didn't work out so well for me. And that's really what most of our work is about, is helping you guys uncover these automated processes.
So that's it, my friends. That's today's episode. I just want to thank you for being part of our Have It All family, and truly, truly thank you for listening to our podcast. If you'd like to help or give back in any way possible, the best way would be to share this or any other episode that you loved with your family, friends, or colleagues. And if you'd be so great as to just leave us a rating and a comment on either iTunes or Stitcher, whichever you use, that helps us tremendously. It only takes about 2 to 3 minutes of your time and would mean the world to us. Finally, I want to let you know that if you want to get even more exclusive content from Guy and I, just head over to satoriprime.com and make sure you join our mailing list. Now, I know what you might be thinking, God, not another mailing list. But I promise you, You'll only get an email or two from us per week, and it will always have amazing videos and articles that I'm sure you're going to love. Promise. So until next time, you can join our ongoing conversation at the Have It All Facebook group, where you can let us know how we're doing and what we can do to improve. Love you all, and we'll see you on the next Have It All podcast. Have an amazing, amazing day, my friends.